What is up, Asymmetry? How y'all doing? I love being able to collaborate on a podcast because being the host of a podcast means that you're always really, really focused on maintaining the narrative, thinking about what the guest is saying, bringing back information from the beginning of the conversation, tying it all together. And just, there's a lot of like mental gymnastics that you do as a podcast host, or at least I do, to try and make the conversation interesting and also just to answer the questions that I have. But when somebody invites me to be a guest on their podcast, I get to let go of all of that. And it creates a different dynamic for me as a speaker and as a podcaster discussing this thing that we all love so much, which is bonsai. And the Bonsai Time podcast from Kevin Harris and Ryan Huston is a podcast that I listen to frequently and really enjoy. Kevin and I go back a long ways. We share a lot of common ground that allow us to connect in terms of our personal experiences, bonsai experiences, etc. So when Kevin and Ryan approached me about being a guest on Bonsai Time, I was really psyched, and I knew that the questions were going to be great. The conversation was going to be fantastic, and it did not disappoint. So if you have any hankering for more bonsai content and solid conversation, take a little visit to the Bonsai Time podcast. The link is down below in the description. Give them a follow, like, subscribe. Kevin and Ryan are really good at what they do, and another voice in the sphere of bonsai podcasts that continue to satiate that hunger. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the collaborative podcast between Mirai and Bonsai Time. Kevin Faris and Ryan Huston, everybody.
So first thing, we have two Ryans on.
Yeah, I figured that would be confusing, but we'll deal with it.
Saying Houston or Doc, but then Kumi's like, he's not a doctor yet. He doesn't deserve the title.
She's right. I can't accept that.
So I'll say RH. Does that work?
Oh, you can say Houston, whatever. Yeah. All
right, that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a gym teacher in elementary school who used to call me Houston, so I'm a little used to that. But
probably more yelling, right? Like, Houston.
Yeah. But he was a funny guy, so he got away with it.
Nice.
Houston's not a bad nickname.
Yeah. I get a lot of Houston, we have a problem. And,
yeah, naturally, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Fair.
But nice to meet you, other Ryan.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well.
A running joke here in the Columbus Club because there's like 5 different bonsai Ryans. So I'm always just calling like, oh, other Ryan.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I had not actually met another Ryan in my life until I started Mirai. And then I have like 4 students named Ryan, and sounds like there's a theme in where are you at, Ohio?
Yeah, I'm in Ohio now, but you may have heard at some point, I used to study with Dan Robinson. I know you've done some content out there with him.
Yeah,
so
cool.
I used to live in Seattle for several years.
Nice. That's a world unto itself, Dan's world. I love it.
Yep.
Nothing but respect.
Yeah, I just remember first time going with Ryan or Houston to Dan's place. That was our first episode we released, and Dan, as tomorrow is Wednesday, just came up. It's like, you see that tree over there? Pulled me right into his side and just like, look at that tree right there. I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, you're not seeing the tree. I'll tell you about it. I was like, oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I was like, I learned a lot from that trip. A lot to unpack there. Still thinking about it these days.
He's like the ultimate ambassador of that space, obviously, because it's like such a reflection of him.
Yeah.
But
it's like his backyard for 80 years now. So,
dude, unbelievable. Yeah. The bonsai community. Any of these like original pioneers and legends, the reason Miguel's driving a truck back is because we went out to Shanty Bithy and and picked up a few trees that they've had out there for a long time that they've been growing for a very long time. I sat down with Jerome and his son and talked about Shantybithi and the beginning of Shantybithi and everything. But, it's like anytime you talk to David Easterbrook or Bill Valvanis or Dan Robinson or in this case, Jerome and the Shantybithi crew, it was like, man, they did not have the resources to learn bonsai, to know what the heck they're doing. It was like so off the cuff. It was so rugged and inventive at that point in time, and there's a lot of failure in that, and there's a lot of learning curve in that and stuff. But like, hats off to the people that took on, bonsai at a point in time in the Western world where there just was not the knowledge being disseminated that we have now. And obviously there's like a level gain that can happen rapidly with the knowledge being present, but there is a tenacity to the spirit of those trees that were created by these pioneers who were just trying to find their way and chop a little path out of this uncharted wilderness of bonsai in North America that is pretty undeniable and makes those trees really special.
Yeah, I talk about that with Chase Rosade a lot. He's been a big mentor to me.
Another one, yeah.
Been doing stuff with him now. I call him my daughter's bonsai grandpa.
Yeah, right.
He's like, I'm OG. I'm like, yeah, you're OG John. He's like, hell yeah. I'm like, he's turned 90 this year.
Yeah, Chase is incredible.
He still has his first tree from 1958.
Yeah,
his maple. Yeah, and he's slowing down. He's had some of his health stuff this year, but I really hope he does get to Kokofu this year. He wants to go. And I'm like, you got to go, man. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, do it, man. You got one life to live. And
yeah.
You're 90 already.
Knowing Chase, he'll probably make that happen.
Yeah, I'm an instigator for him to do things because he's like, I'm like, no, go. Like people want to see you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The bonsai Chase Rosade is a legend. I mean,
he's just so humble. He doesn't take it for granted and he doesn't take it as serious. He's just like, it's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I really respect Chase a lot. I've had a lot of good times with Chase.
Yeah. He's become a huge, almost like a prophetic person for me, but also how I instill teaching or other things like Ryan and I, or Houston and I. Yeah, it's gonna be difficult. We taught a lot in Columbus when I was there. I was there for 6 years. We just left. Did you hear what happened as far as why I ended up in New England area?
No.
So I was awarded the National Bonsai Imprinting Apprenticeship this year.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah. It would have been awesome. We were visiting family in Japan up at my in-laws' house, and my wife, Kumi, lost her job on the 14th, and I lost mine 10 days later over email. Wow. And I was supposed to start within a week, and we had just moved to D.C., Maryland area February 2nd and flew out the 4th to Japan, go to Fukushima and stuff. And we were like, okay, you lost your job. That's fine. I got a buffer with mine. It's cool. And then over breakfast, that's a breakfast I'll never forget. And we had not even been in contract with the apartment on our lease for a month at the time. And so they were separated from me for almost 5 months because she lost all health insurance, everything outright. And I just was bumping around. Chase called me a bonsai vagabond. Right. I was going up and down. It was first a bonsai hobo, and somebody else was like, "No, you're a bonsai nomad." And Chase was like, "No, you're a vagabond." Yeah. I was like, "Okay." And and then we're up here now in Williamstown, which is a nice place. It's 7,000 people, and the nearest bonsai related thing is hour each way. Chris Springer's in Springfield. You got Boston, but that's 3-hour drive one way. And, making it work. Yeah. And help the community out here. Okay. But yeah, I mean, with the ethos of teaching, I guess that leads me to a question for you is how do you find your teaching and your center to keep going with your teaching as you have now? Because you just got back on to Mirai Live, right? In relation to another or a different approach to it, if I can say that.
Right.
How does that look for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because I think I think what I've recognized over the course of time with bonsai, and this was like a seed planted in my head by Mark Nolanders when I was first going to the trophy, and he said, "Let me give you a little piece of advice. The quantity of creativity that you have is finite, and if you tap that cauldron dry, it's very difficult to fill it up." And as a young, aspiring bonsai professional traveling globally and teaching and demonstrating, he said it's going to be real easy for that well to run dry. And so he said, just take it from somebody who's done it for a long time. You got to really protect that well that continues to drive creativity, inspiration, the motivation to pursue an art form that a lot of times is pretty thankless and other times is pretty painful, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think I've found that same thing to be true with teaching. Now for bonsai, for me, being on the road and lending my creativity to the workshop, the demonstration, the private client work, whatever I'm doing is tremendously satisfying to see people's joy and have the personal interactions and the relationships that form. But ultimately, when you create trees, the payoff is the tree giving it back to you and the time spent after that where you watch the tree respond and you develop that relationship. And I really found that constantly traveling, I did tap the well, like towards the end of 2012 into 2013, 3 years after my apprenticeship, like my bonsai well was running pretty dry. And that's really when I pulled back from travel and I really invested heavily in Mirai and making this my place that I was going to focus my practice, around this garden and this facility and this incubator. But teaching was something that I've always felt from the beginning. It's like when you go to Japan and you obtain the skills of an apprenticeship, whoever your master is and whatever your specialty is, you have something that other people don't, that is currency, because there are a lot of challenging moral and ethical questions inside of bonsai, but sharing knowledge has never been morally or ethically challengeable in my mind. That's a positive thing, no matter how you try to cut the onion. Like you end up with people come out better as a result of sharing knowledge. And so I've always felt like the educational component of bonsai was something I could do without having to cross a lot of the moral and ethical hurdles of, say, collecting trees out of the wild and making a living selling them, or trying to purchase things at a lower price and sell them at a higher price, and some of the common business models, which I'm not saying that they're in any way unethical. I'm just saying you end up working with a living organism that you may have to sell to keep the lights on and continue driving a business forward. And I always felt compromised in that being the business model. So education was always the thing that I was like, as long as I can continue to give valuable knowledge and help people grow in their bonsai capacity, whatever their journey and for whatever reason, as long as I'm able to give them some value, I felt like that was a net positive. Over the course of time, though, the well runs dry on certain educational approaches for me. I've modified the shape and form of classes at Mirai multiple times over the 14 years, because we really started in 2011. So the 14 years I've been teaching on site, I've modified the shape and form of the classes. Mainly, I've always wanted to give my most advanced students the best capacity to keep growing, because I think in the bonsai community, we do tend to cater to the beginner as the widest footprint of potential people that want to learn. And then the most advanced people are sort of left out there to kind of fend for themselves and figure out more. And that's the most challenging place to be, because you go longer and farther between your big learning curves where you really elevate your bonsai practice the more advanced you get. And so adjusting the education was always thinking about my most advanced students in mind. And some of those changes led to educational models that really didn't work for people that weren't up to that level, which is a majority of bonsai practitioners. And so economically, it might have not been able to be feasible, or I wasn't able to have my advanced students as much as I wanted for that to work out, to get them the growth that I really aspired to give them in the time that we had together. And then there's also like a commoditization of value and perception of value in the Western world that we have, where if you're not walking away with some new diamond or bar of gold of knowledge, a lot of times people have a hard time seeing the value in having invested in that time. But like I said, the more advanced you get, the longer you have to spend in that area of sort of plateauing in your knowledge and abilities before you obtain that next thing that elevates and you really see an accelerated growth of your skill set, your design, your technique, your horticulture, whatever it is. And so like working with the Western mentality and working with the structure of education has become something that's become very fluid for me here at Mirai, because the ambition and goal of Mirai has always been to provide the things that I did not have. That's like always been my motivation. Can I create a place that I always dreamed would exist when I was in college trying to find the knowledge, and I didn't have that resource? And so thinking about, the evolution of my students and of bonsai in the Western world in general, constantly trying to level up while also bringing everybody that's interested in the same thing at differing levels and skills has been a major motivation. And that's where I get back to the live stream, because the live stream was never designed to be something that I continued to do. Like when we started the live stream, the ultimate outcome of the live stream was supposed to be more or less a comprehensive educational model online that was geographically unlimited. And I think that morphed into the app, but an app that provides everything that Mirai Live provided, which is long form bonsai process, while also telling you when to do what you need to do without you having to know that you need to go look for it. Those are very, very different things for technology to meet all of those demands in a single platform. And so after building the app and seeing how people use the app and getting feedback and not doing Mirai Live and recognizing there's a disconnect from the community where Ryan Neal kind of stepped out of the public realm for a while. I haven't been going to exhibitions for reasons that I've been pretty vocal about in terms of judging, etc. I just kind of felt like, man, I really miss the community that was a part of that. And I'm not going to go back to doing the same thing. Like, we developed different tools. Like, my knowledge has evolved. I've invested heavily in agronomy, regenerative agronomy, and the horticulture and the science on a level that I never really thought I would have the tools to dig that deep. And, design has continued to manifest in different ways, particularly with the projects in the wild. It's changed my perspective and helped me understand intention behind design and formalize a lot of the organization of how to impart my perception of these things to my students. So it felt like it was the right time to come back to Mirai Live in a new way that was more quality than quantity, but to re-engage the community, to share some of the fruits of a lot of hard-earned knowledge over the course of the past several years of labor and intensive study. And more than anything, just to get back in touch with the community that I really valued, which has been the ultimate byproduct and most unforeseen positive to everything that we've done at Mirai. Like, this group of really passionate people around the world that are a part of what we do and feed into what we do and inspire what we do. Like, I miss that. And so it was really special to relaunch it. Yeah.
I remember, those times when I was able to help you out, and then I was able to sit in on some of the live streams. That's a whole system. Like, that's a whole machine that went on behind the scenes that not a lot of people knew about. I was very fortunate, and, thank you for that time. And I was just like, man, this is a whole nother level. But in relation to that too, it's like, I understood why you stepped out. You're a father, you're a family man.
Totally.
You want to, how do you still find that balance to be trying to achieve a better balance, or how are you going about that now? I'm trying to figure that out myself. And other people ask me as a new father, like, how do you do it? I'm like, flip of a coin day by day. I'm like,
Yeah. You can tell them all the things not to do. I think that's kind of what it all comes down to. Yeah. I mean, my son's 11 now, and over the course he's 11, but over the course of the past 5 years, I've become a stepfather to 3 other boys. So there's 4 boys in my family. 11, 12, 16, and 18, soon going on 19, 17, and 13. Taft will turn 12 in 9 days. So, time has gone on. Like, the boys have grown up a lot. And, I think, like, it's really hard to merge the passion and lifestyle of bonsai with the Western mentality, because in Japan, bonsai is a lifestyle. And the kids grow up around bonsai, and the family, facilitates the bonsai practice and endeavor. It's a family-wide endeavor, being a bonsai professional in Japan. And in the United States, it's like we live a life where I think we're constantly talking about balance and trying to strike this balance, as if work and family are different. And that's always been really difficult, because I more or less lead a professional, like a Japanese professional's lifestyle at Mirai. Like, I'm here all the time. I'm caring for the trees 365, 24/7. Which is very familiar to me from my apprenticeship and the way that I saw bonsai practiced at the highest level. But then there is this expectation to extricate yourself from this lifestyle and then have a personal life that's sort of separate from it. And that's not really possible. But it is the Western expectation of this notion of balance, which I would really love to find somebody who's actually found it, because I think it's one of these sort of ethereal things like happiness. It's like this phrase that we're all supposed to aspire to, that like somebody found in a book, and it's not. I just don't find it to be real, or even in the aspiration of it. I think balance forces you to move towards mediocrity, honestly. So, trying to incorporate and show the boys that work really is a positive thing. It doesn't need to be demonized, even though there's all kinds of cartoons and after school shows that show these families going through these traumatic things of the dad not being around and working too much. And it does really plant a lot of seeds in kids' minds of like, oh yeah, I'm getting shorted here. But it's like, well, no, if you're a part of it and you get to appreciate that there is a life where you get to do something that you love, and it doesn't feel like work when that's the life that you chose for yourself and intentionally tried to live. There's a lot of beauty in getting to share that and model that for your kids. And so that's kind of been how I've tried to modify my perspective of it, also being indoctrinated with the general Western mentality of a quest for happiness and balance, and recognizing that it's not attainable for me in what I aspire to do with my life and limited time on earth. So, work in progress for sure. But the boys are very much a part of this place and operation. And, Taft's got his trees, but beyond that, Taft is just here. He knows the team. He knows the students. Right. They come to dinners with us when I'm teaching. We live out here. They are a part of helping me move things and do work on the facility. And that's been like the very best way that I've found to like blend this notion of family and business or profession or occupation. As I see it.
So it's better integration over time than
kind of like a family business at this point then.
Yeah. I mean, I think there have been times where it's been a little bit more of a family business than it is now, because our lives are sort of bridged between a reality where there's a lot better schools in Portland than there are out here in Columbia County. And there's a lot more opportunity for kids to be involved in sports and social activities and stuff like that. So I still am a little bit on the outside of town, as Dan would say.
Dirty 30.
Yeah, totally. The dirty 30, pass it every day and wonder what it looks like in there. But no, I mean, it's a challenge, but since rebuilding the house and the reconstruction of the facility and stuff, we are definitely finding a new lifestyle, trying to be out here more. Nice. And like the boys and my wife Irene integrating into Mirai, and this being another home that we have and stuff. And that's been a whole nother journey unto itself, because there's just like a lot of grime and grit in what transpired here and how you move past that and how you start to forge new positive connotation in a place that's taken on a lot of trauma, which Mirai definitely took on some pretty heavy stuff. But I think it's been really also pretty cathartic to have to confront that stuff and try and find a new way, find a new perspective.
Within that perspective, like you're talking about with the loss, is that similar, if not the same for you from the loss you felt like when you talk about with Kimura before, where you went back and said, hey, and he just treated you like a known, like you weren't anybody's business except to work?
Yeah, that's really interesting you asked me that. Nobody's ever really asked me that and drawn that similarity. But the moment that you said, is it similar to how that transpired? Yeah, actually it is. It's like coming to peace with something that is out of your control, and the only thing that you can do is decide how you respond to it. I think that the rejection that I felt from my apprenticeship probably manifested itself in a bubbling cauldron of fire inside me to try and do something exceptional and actualize what I wanted to be, which was the best bonsai artist I had the capacity to be, in this version of myself. And over the course of time, like that fire, I learned a lot. I've grown. I've, experienced life. I've gone through some things, and I don't feel that same like anger or that same motivation inspired by the defiance that I felt of needing to prove something to the only person that matters is really proving it to yourself. But, I felt like I needed to prove something to the world in a lot of ways, coming with the reputation of the best bonsai master that's ever existed in my mind. And I think that's, I think a lot of people share that. Mr. Kimura is a true genius, and I had his name tattooed on my back leaving, and there were high expectations, and I didn't want to disappoint for his lineage, for the respect I had for him, for the respect I had for myself, my own self-expectation. But, losing something that you have worked hard for and earned or built with your bare hands and sacrificed for, which is, the level that I achieved in my apprenticeship, and feeling like that was sort of immediately removed, that sense of place and belonging in a foreign culture that I worked hard to not be a foreign entity in over the time, is very similar to building this space in a spot where, like one of the great basic human needs is shelter. And that shelter means a lot. It's your point of safety, and that sense of safety and security that comes with that being really violated and broken down and dismantled. What was really tough, both of them have taken me a long time to recover from. I doubt I'll ever fully recover from either one of them, because those things definitely leave their mark, and there's like a really deeply embedded memory of the experience of that. But you have to continue moving forward, or else that act owns you. And I don't want to be owned by anything, like I think when you think about happiness or balance or freedom, these like big grand statements, it's like being untethered to this sense that other people have control over you, and like, or other things have control over you, and being sort of the master of your own destiny. I think that's what I've learned. I aspire to achieve sort of in this in this lifetime that I have, is just really trying to sever not the tethers of love and friendship and relationship, nothing like that, but severing feelings that are a byproduct of not having control of a situation and being controlled by your desire to control those things. And I had no control over how Mr. Kimura viewed me as an apprentice pre and post. And I really had no control over what happened here. I just was left to respond to it. Yeah, exactly. And try to move forward without it having control,
Yeah.
Do you think that practicing bonsai and having that continuity of working on the trees themselves, like the business aside, do you think that has helped you embrace the fact that you don't have control over everything and like heal from what you need to heal over?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation in the workshop with my apprentice and a student who's here to study, but I think that I have, I think that you are going to commit the same mistakes in life over and over until you learn the lesson. Like life's not going to stop cycling that back through your pipeline of experiences. And it's kind of on us to decide if we're going to learn that lesson or if we're going to keep beating our head against a wall and suffering what I think are cumulatively greater and greater, painful marks from not learning the lesson. Mm-hmm. And I think control is one of these things that we all kind of seek in our life. Like we want to know that we can determine our own situation and circumstances. And in bonsai, one of the most painful things that I've learned is that I really have no control. And that's really frustrating and upsetting to me, because you go through a lot to make these living organisms look beautiful. And when I say make, I think even that's a fallacy, because you got to work with the tree, right? But like you're giving an impression and then the tree responds. And as you converse more and more, the tree gets closer to your vision. And if you can work with it, it will do what you want it to do if you're working in respect to the tree. But it never works out exactly as you want. And letting go of the rope on that is really a tough balance, because it's like you still have a duty and responsibility. The tree depends on you for survival. So there's no just like walking away and being like, fuck it, you figure it out yourself. Then that's not not the obligation that you took on when you took on ownership of that tree. But it also is like, man, I tried so hard and it still didn't worked out differently, worked out in ways, but those have also been the biggest growth points, right? Like that's when you really, really learn, when you're like, oh, wow, I did not know that, and that's been, I would say the past 3 years being separate from the live stream and more public in the sharing of my knowledge, just learning so much about the internal structure of the tree, the behavior, the balance, the ability to manipulate things by providing more of or less than, and seeing how all of those things dovetail. The complexity of it is overwhelming. The desire to understand it all completely consumed me to the fault, of the process and of everything else. And I've always been somebody who has pushed past the walls to know where the boundaries exist. And I really, even in the science and horticulture, pushed past the limits and found out where that boundary exists. And it helps me reframe and find some of the fundamental things you forget in the quest for the outer limits. But definitely, like, the trees have been the guiding force. They're the motivation, and they're also the greatest learning tool that I have. And honestly, they're kind of the best friend that I've got through this whole experience, because they're the reason that we do it. And what they give back to you is such a silent instruction on life, if you can listen and metaphorically sort of decipher what they're trying to say, which is like finding meaning in something that doesn't maybe have that same intention to give you what you're giving it, but you get it whether you are looking for it or not. It's just a matter of if you're ready to receive it. And I think I've learned over the course of time how to better receive what the trees have to offer, and accept that is something special that doesn't always come with the most pristine design or most refined shape or most excellent execution. It comes in all of the spaces between the hard lines that we tend to define as the practice of bonsai in the Western world.
Authenticity.
Yeah. And the value in the unspoken, the value in the lesser valued space between the words.
So it's almost sounding like, I can empathize with this idea. I'll say, not to put words in your mouth, but this loss of identity to find yourself again, in relation to going through these trials and tribulations to only find out that you didn't think you were that person who could do the thing you're doing now, or never expected to be the person who you are now. Because we're always trying to find our own personalities in anything we do, whether it be trees or raising a kid, right? It's like, because they're a reflection of us. What is one thing that you think people get wrong about you consistently?
Oh, that's really,
Going deep tonight.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I actually, Lonnie came down.
I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, no, well, and you're deep, dude. And, you and I go here when we talk, but like Lonnie came down and we were having this super esoteric discussion in the workshop. And she's like, all right, you ready to podcast? And I was like, guy, I might be too deep, but we're here and I love it. And it's kind of where I was at when we started. But, I have to be really honest. I see some things that people say about me. I hear some things that people say about me. I've never, obviously it impacts me. So it's not to say I don't care, like, right? Like that's the easy way. I don't care what people say. Yeah, everybody cares to some degree. It hurts, or it's nice, or it's flattering, or it's validating. All of those things. But I've never put a lot of weight into it because I had a very like clear path and motivation from the beginning. And although I've gone through periods of lacking a little bit of purpose or intention or wondering what the heck I'm doing, I have never fully lost sight of what I'm all about and what I'm trying to accomplish. And so, I'm a bigger critic of myself than anybody else will be. I'm more judgmental of my work, my actions, the things I say, how I come off, trying to always like tease out, is my motivation pure? Is my intention right? And also, did I handle that in a way that when I look back, whether it's on the deathbed or just in a point in time in life where I'm a little bit wiser, that I'm gonna kind of go, oh, that like cringy feeling of like, wow, I really fucked up there. And there's a lot of things I look back at my apprenticeship or how I handled post-apprenticeship where I look back and I feel like, that wasn't the best way to handle that, or that's something that I'm going to carry with me as like, I don't feel good about that. And I don't want to repeat that mistake.
Your edges were too sharp then.
They were very sharp. They were very sharp. And I think they cut a lot of people, and I didn't intend to have any outward harm. I just didn't know how to sheathe the blade, at that point in time. And I still have those moments, I think like anybody who's trying to do something that has not been done or is trying to do it differently. I mean, Dan Robinson's a perfect example. Like he can be prickly at times, and it can rub people the wrong ways, and it can hurt, and it can do damage. And also like he's doing something that's bucking the trend and nobody else has done. And you have to have that. You have to have that sharpness of your blade to do it in a way that people will respect. Otherwise, you're just doing something less than what everybody else is doing, And I think I saw that. I saw that with Mr. Kimura and how he bucked the trend, and the edge that it took for him to do that, and the edge that it took for him to maintain that level of greatness for the entirety of his career, which a narrative arc of an artist does not maintain that level for that long unless you've got some pretty prickly points and you can maintain that durability of taking those hits. But I would say, if I had to imagine how people perceived me, I would assume that some people probably perceive me as having a high level of arrogance. I was giving a critique in Chicago in 2012, and at that time it was put on YouTube, and the YouTube comments were super vicious. And I felt like it was one of the better critiques I had given, with really positive, constructive feedback. But one of the things that stuck in my mind is, here's another one of these Japanese trained Western apprentices that thinks they're a bonsai god. And it's like a fine line being an educator that is trying to share organized information as I come to make sense of it. And to give that to somebody in a way where they can feel confident in the information they're given, to be able to use it and apply it. And I've made missteps, like whether it's the compost extract or promoting modalities in bonsai that weren't proven to work, and then later finding out they don't work. And, that can build mistrust or things like that. Like, I've made missteps in that, but I really do try to break the knowledge and information that I put out there, and really beat it down and see if it holds up before I put it out there, because I want people to feel confident that they can listen to what I'm saying and feel like it's going to work for their trees, given all criteria, etc. And that's a really complex thing. But like, I want to give good knowledge that gives people success, or else bonsai doesn't progress. Right. And so like inside of that, if arrogance or some notion, that I know everything or know better than other people comes across, I can definitely see that, but it is definitely not the reality of how I feel or think about myself and the information I'm giving. Because I'm constantly trying to break it down, and I'm constantly criticizing and scrutinizing my own work and what I'm doing. And this place was really the place that I needed to create to work out these ideas and try and test all of the knowledge and see if it in fact worked. And continuing to travel and stay aware of changing trends and climate and horticulture and all those things is how I try to stay on top of being able to give good, solid, valuable information and adapt it so that it's malleable and people can retrofit it to where they're at in their practice and what they're trying to accomplish. But that off the top of my mind, I think arrogance, when you are perceived as an authoritative figure or an educator giving knowledge, can often be misplaced. And certainly for Mirai, it would definitely not be a good representation of who I am, how I think about what I do, and definitely how I try to convey the knowledge that I'm trying to share.
It's in that relationship where I know a lot of musicians that give their full life devoted to music, and they have the same kind of expression of this energy that just is exuding from them, where they're like, oh, they're on a different level. And if people aren't on that level, from my experience, they're not in the same kind of contingency of the application to get there or understand what it takes to get there. Because from my experience as a Westerner, being in relationship with a non-Western person, it's very much that ethos where there is that mindset of Westerners where it's like, I'm bigger than I think I am sometimes, but I'm also not as big as I want to be. And I think people get thrown off by that because we're not supposed to do that sometimes. But then again, if you look at all the people that made history for what it is, good, bad, or otherwise, it was the same composition of that framework, right? You keep pushing through the grit, you cut your teeth, and then you file them down till they're sharp and pointy. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Being a father does that too, right? You're growing a kid. It's like, I'm a full-time dad now. I when I left Ohio, my intention was to bring the trees later this year. They're going to be at a friend's place in his backyard in Maryland. Could have had them. I sold all my trees because I couldn't.
Not quite all of them, but
I still have a few left in the pocket, but they're not with me. And I talked to David Cutchins about this. Him, Dave, obviously,
yeah,
a good brother in Bonsai,
one of my dudes.
family member.
Yeah, one of my dudes.
I told him, I got a loss, but I learned more from that loss and the identity of who I thought I was in relation to it wasn't who I was supposed to be anymore, because my trees are now on to new life that will then exemplify what they're meant to be in relationships of new people that I could help guide as well. Yeah. Because I know the people who bought them. And it sounds like it's similar for you in relationships of like, there are people that come and go through each part of your life, but friendships aren't forever. And trees aren't forever to be with you. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I can understand what you're saying through that, because I've been going through the whirlwind of this identity, and you don't know to where you're going until you get somewhere where you've never been. And that's this new year. I hope we find all that.
I think I start. I think I start every spring. Optimistic and like, this is going to be the best year ever. And what I've learned over like 15 years is I'm going to take my licks every year, and they're going to look different. And that was one thing about watching Mr. Kimura pursue bonsai. I remember when I was by myself as his only apprentice for 9 months, I was the only one there. And it was more man-to-man direct communication at that time, obviously, because it was just me and him. There was nobody else to metaphorically buffer what was being said directly in an indirect way. And I was seeking some level of recognition that like the garden was healthy and looking good. And I said, the garden looks really good right now. And he said, yeah, it's spring. Just wait. And I was like, no. If I'm responsible for this, it's going to look good the whole year. And he knew, and everybody in bonsai should know, eventually, and it's also a product of scale. Like the more trees you have, the more problems you're going to have, the more, setbacks you're going to have. That's a part of a product of scale. But like, I always think about that because every spring I'm like, all right, can this be the year that like nothing catastrophic happens and I just get to live this kumbaya, romantic vision of bonsai where all the trees are healthy and we make lots of cool trees and everybody gets along and things are just, euphoric. And I've yet to accomplish that. So I'm starting to learn 15 years in. That's not really a realistic vision to set my sights on or build up my hopes for. And in that, there's like a real danger of like, when's the shoe going to drop? Where you lack the ability to enjoy it because you're just waiting for the next catastrophic thing to happen. And, Mirai is outside of city limits. It's not in the buffer of a built environment. It's in the middle of a forest. And there's a lot of unpredictable things that happen in the middle of a forest, whether it's a tree falling or, a blizzard or high winds or heat dome.
Heat wave in 2021.
Absolutely. You name it, it happens here. Yeah. I've really realized Mirai is, I thought I was taking the trees from a rugged environment and bringing them into a friendly environment where they can just show, and they're like, I am, guys. Yeah, totally. Like now I'm all good, but like I have the scars, but really things are great. Yeah. And it's like, no, Mirai as a facility is a rugged place for people and trees to exist. And that's been, going back to the control thing, that's been a little hard to relinquish control that I haven't created utopia. Because that's what I thought I was creating. And really inside of Mr. Kimura's garden in the built environment, there was a lot of control. And then the Japanese model of bonsai, there's a lot of control. And in their practice, there's a lot of control. And I just have not found that to be the case where I'm at with what I'm doing and what I'm seeking to learn. So that's been a little bit brutal to realize over time. But I think I'm getting better at accepting it every year, because every year, unless I accept it, I'm going to be, sort of brutally bludgeoned by that reality.
Yeah, I think there's also a cultural identity with that with Japan, because it's such a long cultured craft and art form that's been there. They have that methodology. And I can only speak from what I've seen, and that's been more than probably some people around the world because of my access to the culture, but also not having ever taken an official apprenticeship over there in that only space where you live and you don't see anything outside of that niche area, right? We talked about this before, a while back. And it's that idea where there is that control method because that's how the method of control is for the society as a whole. The saying goes, if there's a nail sticking out of a board, you hammer it down. Groupthink is a thing that works for them. It's also what's made them last for millennia, right?
Totally.
And as Westerners, the thing that I get into a lot is where people find that I'm married to a Japanese person, so they assume something about me where it's like this. I'm like, no, I have to. We talked about this back, I think, at the first expo in California, like balancing both sides, because I owe it to my other side of my family, but also to myself. And I think there's a weird contingency in the U.S. right now, especially with this Japan versus not Japan versus whatever you want to call it. I just want us to be happy making trees. And I've been traveling a lot on the East Coast, in the Midwest, and in, West Coast too. And I've seen a lot of things. I wouldn't say I've traveled as much as you or anyone else, but how can we get past that? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know it's been a while since you traveled, but there are things that you've seen come and go, especially with online teaching and now your own methodologies. I mean,
don't get me wrong,
but
I still travel and teach quite a bit. I mean, I try to stay aware. Yeah. For me, I feel like, having to draw a hard line of like, I'm a loyalist to this approach. This is what I like. This is what I do, is really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous because
I was going to say,
go ahead.
Do you feel that people still pigeonhole you because you studied with Kimura or did an apprenticeship, where you should be a certain way, then you're not?
No, I don't think so anymore, because I've been such a staunch advocate for representing nature in miniature, and the Mirai and the Wild projects. I think I put my money where my mouth was, and I went out there and I did it. And I do it. I do that. That's the most important thing that I do for me, for what I'm trying to achieve. But if you come to Mirai, I don't know what people expect when they come here, but a large majority of the trees are still styled in a traditional manner. Right. It's rare that in a miniature form you get the elements present to do justice to the material of its highest aesthetic potential, creating a natural form. Like, everything's got to be right to show that condition in the environment in a miniaturized form, in that condensed space and proportion. And so the traditional model, like the proportions and the scale, and there's a physiological response to seeing that in the human brain and what it generates. And, beyond that, just the beautiful discipline of it, and the, the form and the pattern of it. If you're in karate or taekwondo, and it's your fundamental forms. If you're in yoga, it's your traditional poses. If whatever you're doing, it's like that is the basis for the practice that we have all come to know and love. I think, I spoke in that period of my life where I was trying to carve out a different identity and figure out what does it mean to do bonsai in America in this context, with this material and this inspiration, represent it, represent culture, represent environment, represent the individual when we're all speaking on a different artist statement. I think I spoke pretty derogatorily about the traditional model, and that is something that now I feel like the way I'm able to speak about it is like, we should be able to do that and this, and ultimately the tree should be the one that decides. But the barrier to entry to making trees look natural is you've got to spend a lot of time in the environment. Like, you've got to get out into the wild, which is, I do believe, where we're meant to be. You got to get out there and you've got to experience it and feel it and know it and understand it. And you've got to be able to make sense of it and abstract it. And you've got to have the technique and the horticulture to actualize it and express it and represent it and be able to evolve it. And that's a big, let's just be really honest, that's a big skill set that nobody has ever really broken down. Okay, we do this to a Japanese black pine to make it look like a traditional pine, but can you handle Japanese black pine that same way and show more of an umbrella canopy that would grow on the coast of the islands outside of, southeastern, Honshu? And the reality is, no, you have to make modifications to that system horticulturally, technically, artistically, to be able to represent that natural form. And I've found that across the board, whether it's reiterations with redwoods or whether it's a wind-informed shape on a limber pine. And it's like, it has to be, there's tweaks to the traditional model. And I don't think that a lot of people are going to have the number of trees and time spent trying to massage that to be able to manifest the best of it. And that's where, as an educator, I feel like my job is to share those insights that I've kind of found. If people find my work to be visually beautiful, then like, here's how I did it. Here's how I get here. Here's how I make the changes and the adjustments. But respecting that both are equally valid. And we don't need to draw a line in the sand that I do this or this, I like this or this, because it's all, you're right. Let's get back to making trees. Like, let's enjoy the beauty in whatever context and form it's being represented, because they're all valid if done well. That was the fundamental thing. Like, if you do it well, it's valid. If people can look at it and say, wow, that's beautiful. I'm transported to that landscape, or wow, that's beautiful. That looks like a bonsai. It's like, okay, both of those are awesome. Like, let's be really clear. I think that's where I wish the conversation would go.
That's how every time I try to steer it, I was able to teach Jim Doyle's this year during spring. I worked with him for a bit at his nursery, hired me on with the whole job loss and stuff. I worked with him and Chase in the woodstock class that he has. And I learned so much just from them teaching, but I also brought a different perspective, because not that I'm younger, but I just have a different outlet and a different access to, like people like yourself or Michael, all these people that have different ethos and aesthetics and manipulation techniques or what have you. And we all came centered at the end of the the session, the final day of the three-day class. And we were both like, wow, we all learned something new from everybody, including the students.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
yeah.
it wasn't about cultural identity of a tree, certain shapes or things. It wasn't about this or that. It was just, we were there. There was no bureaucracy of East versus West or whatever else. It's not the 1990s hip hop battle.
Totally.
It's just
it's not
thing.
Tupac and Biggie. Yeah. That's not what we're doing here.
No. And I think it's getting there. But again, like yourself, you've been striving to say that. And I feel like, you hear talks, but also you hear people not being able to get past what people have said before, and they don't see you as who you are now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Do you feel like that's kind of something that's also contributed to certain people saying something about you?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it's harder and harder to know people authentically in the modern era. And so I think a lot of people's hypotheses about other individuals is shrouded in what's seen on social channels and in these, sound bites and media distributions. I definitely try to be my authentic self in what we distribute through Mirai, because I really find it disenchanting to see this, this makeup laden lipo appearance on social and feel like somebody. And it's like people who want to play that game and present their non-authentic self as being this, idyllic, beautiful, aspirational end goal. It's not real, and I don't value or find that authenticity to be awesome. So my obligation, if that's how I feel, is to try and be as authentic as I possibly can. And I feel like I've done my best, but I definitely pulled back from the public eye and being out there as much, putting myself out there as much. Like I needed that, like you said, to be a good dad, to be a good husband, to build a family, to rebuild this place. But I also needed it just for myself, because I had a lot of shit to figure out after going through another pretty challenging sort of life moment there. And and then trying to figure out also, with all of these changing tides, like where is Mirai headed? Where am I headed? Like, what is the reason? What is the motivation? What is the purpose? Like, if there's no purpose, this was never a vanity art form for me. It was always an expression and a vehicle of expression. And it's like, what am I trying to say? And like, that's really where I do find a lot more value in the silence and letting people interpret me for what they will. But like, if I'm representing the natural landscapes that are forming me for who I am and what I'm becoming, I don't really need to talk about it as much. I've realized, I'm not standing on a soapbox telling people they need to make trees look more natural. If I were going to stand on a soapbox, I would say, please get out into these places. Please value these places. Please conserve these places, because they're an identity that we don't get back, and they're rapidly disappearing and rapidly being taken advantage of. But that would be the only soapbox that I would stand on at this point in time. I mean, I look at Mario Comstad's work. I look at Sergio Kwan's work. I look at Peter T's work. I'm aware of everybody's work, and all of them are doing amazing things in different ways that you take little tidbits from everything, and it's like, ooh, how does Peter get that kind of ramification on the interior branches of his trees? And how does Mario get away with removing that many needles and continuing to drive the horticulture forward? And how does he achieve, that softness on this species at this time, or that ramification on that tree in that container? Like, I'm always thinking about that stuff. But I think aesthetically and what I'm trying to express, I'm really thinking about what my intention is with every tree that I sit down to, and how to make it the best with the vision that I have and all of the things that I bring to that scope of work at that point in time. And I think the really difficult thing is detaching the weight that we carry on a daily basis from all of the things around us, all the noise when you sit down with a bonsai tree, because the tree feels that wire when you're tense or when you're upset or when you're not present, and the tree feels that prune that was misplaced because you were in the wrong headspace. And so it's like, how does bonsai become something where you detach yourself from those things and you bring your best self to the tree regardless of external circumstances? I really feel like that's what defines a professional.
Mm.
And it's not that easy. It's not that easy on a daily basis dealing with life in the United States. I mean, we got it really good, but like it's gotten more complicated. You know, there's a lot of red tape and paperwork to living here compared to what my life was like in Japan or what I see life being like in other places. And it's not to say the grass is always greener. It's to say there's a complexity to life here that has grown more complex, you know, with technology, with social media, with, infrastructure and the necessity to maintain what the United States has become as a citizen here. It takes a little more work, you know, and so that creates a lot of noise. To create bonsai in the United States is to be able to cut through some of that noise and find your best self when you sit down with that tree, which is a real skill set, and it's also a real discipline.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you often in your garden there are traditional forms and naturally inspired forms. Have you experimented with other kind of genres of bonsais like Robinson-esque or clip and grow or Lenzian or cosmic even? Like in terms of the tree calling for it to be traditional or naturally inspired, does it ever pull you in a unique direction that you haven't really aren't as well known for as that other artists are more well known for?
Yeah, no. I can only make what I am, right? I can only make what's natural within me to bring to the table. Does that mean that I'm not informed by the wild shapes of a Landon and the complete lack of tether to, Dan really sort of lets go of the rope completely and says, all right, this tree's going to do what it's going to do. The branches that are going to live are live. The branches that are going to die are going to die. And that's all part of it. And I look at that and I'm just like, damn, that's awesome, man. It's undeniable. If you spend 4 days at a Landon Gardens and you go look at traditional bonsai, they're going to look boring. And that's not to say traditional bonsai is boring. It's to say when you acclimate to Dan Robinson's garden, it is undeniably filled with visual energy and a uniqueness of form that you don't see anywhere else. And you could say the same thing about standing in front of Loren's compositions at the trophy. And you've got 200 trees that are styled in varying cultural forms and cultural representations of the bonsai model. And then you've just got this cosmic bonsai with this very innovative avant-garde and very defiant gesture. It's got the biggest crowd around it. And you stand in front of it and you're just like, it's undeniably of a high horticultural level, high technical level, high artistic level. And it looks nothing like anything else. But I can't make that, and I don't aspire to make that, and I don't aspire to make Dan's work or Nick's work or, Walter Paul's work or anybody else's work. I can only make what I can make, and what I have tried to do to make that authentic to myself is load my database of images that I reference with the things that I find to be true to me, which ultimately has become the oldest and wildest trees in the most outlandish natural environments. And so that's really what I fill my file base in my mind with, that I reference the most when I'm creating a tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this is probably an area where, there may be differences within the community, but a lot of hobbyists, say here in Columbus, we'll have different visiting artists come through. And so we may have trees influenced by different artists. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people are at the hobbyist level are open to saying, okay, I'm going to try to make this one cosmic, or I'm going to try to make this one gnarly, or kind of have more variation like that. But I see what you're saying about focusing on your style, like what you are more adapted to, rather than trying to copy other artists.
Yeah, and that's not to say, listen, do I admire the conical apex of Nick Lenz's larches? Yeah, I think it's super true to form. Do I look at David Crust's work and say he captured the ultra elongated tall form in the narrowness of his branches with a high level of ramification? For sure. I think that there's certain aspects of what people are able to pull off where I'm like, that is authentic to that species. They did it. They cracked the code. I want to know I want to know what that looks like, and I want to know how I can pull that into my practice to give this tree a much more authentic gesture and representation of the species or the environment or that element. I mean, David DeGroote's wind-informed design was way ahead of its time in his initial design book, and his Jabota Kaba that's formed in that, is a nightmare to maintain, but like undeniably epic and amazing. It's like trying to get a tamarisk to be a weeping form, as if you might as well just slam your head against two cinder blocks, but like it's fucking awesome when you pull it off. So it's like all of those things, I do see, experiment, want to know, understand, learn, but ultimately, like I said, like my value system growing up in Colorado in the mountains, finding the wild and remote landscapes of North America and on a global level, because I've been to a lot of ancient trees on different continents. That's where my best experiences and my best self exists, as I see myself. It's where I feel the most grounded. It's where I feel the happiest. It's where I feel that I carry the least amount of weight and burden, and I'm able to sort of be free of that stuff. And reflecting that sensation and that experience, I think, gets back to the core of why penjing started in China. You're talking about an art form that was ultimately pursued by sophisticated, educated, and potentially spiritually driven individuals that went and had profound experiences and didn't have a cell phone to take a snapshot that they came home to look at periodically. And so what did they do? They made a tree that represented that landscape and was able to remind them of that space. Like, I feel like what I'm trying to do is, I didn't have that goal in mind, but that's what happened. And then I was like, oh shit, this is where this whole thing started. Now I kind of get it, or at least I feel like I get it to some degree, why this began and what the whole purpose of it was. And so from that perspective, penjing's become a bigger influence, but I honestly don't look at a lot of penjing, and I honestly don't look at like a tremendous amount of bonsai. I look a lot more for ancient trees, just in like my general like free time and stuff. I'm always trying to find, where's the next ancient grove I want to go to? Are there images of it? If there are not, I'm going to go take them myself. If there are, I'm going to look at them and I'm going to imagine what it's like to be there, and I'm going to get there to see it for myself.
Have you heard of that opt outside challenge that REI does?
No.
Oh, well, every year around Black Friday, they kind of challenge all their, customers to spend Black Friday outside in nature instead of shopping. So we were actually planning something similar, where we were going to publish some little blurb saying, okay, we want all of our listeners to go outside in nature between now and Christmas, whenever they have time, and then report back what they observed, like try to observe something in the natural environment. And this idea came about also because I'm very drawn to the natural environment, obvious inspiration of Dan Robinson. So I've been kind of experimenting with ideas to make this podcast medium a little more two-way rather than just one-way communication. So I'm interested to see what people will observe. But I also had a question for you, that you say that you're very drawn to these natural forms and like that's your main inspiration. And obviously a lot of respect goes into that, respect for nature, for the trees. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you think about that and combining them with these modern containers like Jonathan Cross, or like with someone like Ben Keating is doing? Because I've been talking to him more, and I have a couple of his pots, and now I'm like, I have not reconciled for myself, what the heck do I put in a Ben Keating pot? But he's still experimenting. So I'm still kind of watching and waiting and thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, what I would say about Jonathan Cross is I don't think there's a more organic container that exists that is man-made, right? Like you go find a piece of driftwood or a rock, a natural stone, and now you have nature on nature, right? In terms of the aesthetic. But Jonathan is using incredibly organic methodologies. He's creating and I think this is really necessary to understand, he's creating in the environment. Like he's out in the desert making his work. He's firing with natural materials that leave their print on the work. When I put the John Naka tree into the Jonathan Cross, I felt like there was nothing more appropriate that I could have done. And that was so controversial, like this modern container. I actually look at Jonathan Cross's work and think that it's about as organic as man-made work gets. So from that perspective, I don't think there's another ceramicist that's doing more important work in the bonsai sphere than Jonathan Cross right now. And that's why our trees continue to find their way into the ones that stick around here, because there's become a bigger and bigger demand as people appreciate that aesthetic and start to understand it. Like the continuity of it is undeniable, as far as this is what we're trying to do. This is a vessel that maybe gets closer to that than anything outside of a non-man-made natural element. As far as like sculptural work, I mean, I've also planted trees on Corten steel. The ponderosa pine that was at the Pacific Bonsai Museum for the avant-garde exhibition that was planted in the light box that was made by an artist in Portland. I really think that bonsai has the ability to create very critical dialogue and contextual discussion. And I think the best example of that being verbalized was when Dave DeGroot did the audio critique of the President Hoover Larch that was in the Artisan's Cup, which is still online, artisanscup.com. You can go listen to that critique of President Hoover in the vacuum. It's now on permanent collection at the Pacific Bonsai Museum. David Krust donated that piece. I think there was no more critical moment and decision in bonsai than that tree being in that show, opening the door for contextual dialogue, and Dave DeGroot's critique of that was so high level. He saw so far beyond bonsai the craft and really saw bonsai the art, which David Krust is a deep dude that thinks very, very cerebrally about what he does. It's highly intentional. And Dave DeGroot, just to summarize what he said, he basically said, this is nature overcoming man-made things. And it's unbelievable. And when I heard his critique, I was just like, like mind blown, because it opened a new door. And like when I think about Benjamin Keating's work, it's like, yeah, here is a sculptor that's creating contextual vessels that you can bounce off of and create dialogue and critical narrative. We talk about bonsai being an art form, and there's this notion of, should we use a traditional container? Is this thing? And it's just like, that's so elementary school for the narrative of, if bonsai is art, then like you need to start thinking, people need to start evolving and thinking about, as the level of bonsai in the United States has grown and risen, you have more professionals that are capable of executing the traditional model on a high level, and yet they choose to do something different. The question is not, is that right or wrong, good or bad, do I like it or not? The question is, what are they trying to say? That is the notion of bonsai as an art form. What is the intention? If that's not the question being asked, then we're still in elementary school. Go work on your ABCs. Let's not talk about this until you're ready to speak in complete sentences, because we're having a different conversation here. There's intention. What is this artist that has the capacity to create these other things with a high level of execution and decided to do this, saying in this contextual composition? That's where I think that stuff is so important, and it's opening the door, whether it's Horst Heinzelreiter creating contextual capacity with his ceramics and really artistic interpretations, Tom Benda, the Triscali boys, the Third Wheel Potters artist residency at Mirai, and what they open the door for people to do with those ceramics, or it's sculptors and artists like Jonathan Cross and Benjamin Keating and any of these other individuals that are really pushing the envelope. It's like we got to raise our game as bonsai consumers to understand that this isn't a discussion of, I'm a traditionalist, I'm a naturalist, or is this right or wrong? This is a discussion of, this is somebody representing themselves and a critical statement about whatever that composition has to do with. And we need to be thinking, what are they trying to say?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just at this point, we've got to see that people's level is high enough that there is intention behind that. And if you're not asking that, you're not looking hard enough. You're not thinking hard enough about it. You're not showing enough respect to what's being done in the art form right now.
I agree in that realm because I feel like a lot of the time that I've dealt with people, and I'm not trying to bad talk anyone I've worked with or that's wanted to work with me or I've been able just to help out, whether it be students or anything. We again, I think it comes back to culture. Being that we are Westerners, we're trying to find a craft before we know what the art truly is to us because we need to know how to get there. And in Japan, it's a cultural identity and based on the thing of like, at my wedding, we got married in 2020, we had bonsai there. Mm-hmm. And when Kumi was like, oh, this reminds me of my graduation, we had bonsai trees there too. I was like, oh wow, that's a whole nother concept I never even thought about. What a business model.
Yeah, totally. The Western mind right there.
Right, capitalism. All right. No. Yeah. It's one of those things where I have that kind of contemplation a lot of the time of like, how can I make my art better, but also understanding that the horticulture value is more and far greater than my own art that needs to be shown. And I think there's a dichotomy in that sometimes with a lot of people where either they know one or the other, and it's hard to mesh both because science to art can create, the science of art, but does art lead into science sometimes? How well of a benefit does it cause or does it take away?
I mean, it doesn't have to. I mean, that's the beauty of art. It doesn't have to, but it certainly could, and the science can create great art, and great art can open doors to science, but they don't have to. True. I think like that's one of the beautiful things about art and about bonsai as this, I've always called it my peephole into the world. It's like looking through like a hotel door and seeing that hallway, like all fish-eyed, and you see people and activity and like all walks of life in the hallway of that hotel. But I'm just looking through this tiny little hole. It's like bonsai allows you to look at art. It allows you to look at design. It allows you to look at materials. It allows you to look at architecture. It allows you to look at literature and other forms of expression. It allows you to see the science. It allows you to see the conservation, naturalism, like the wild environment, the earth as a floating marble, like whatever it all relates ultimately, right? If you can get to that point metaphorically to be able to extrapolate those connections of DNA. But I think, ultimately when you talk about bonsai in its form as it is most commonly practiced, it is a craft, right? It is a repetition of pattern. It is a repetition of technique. The application of wire is a technique associated with an execution of craft. And you say, okay, well then what elevates craft to an art form? You have a mastery of that technique with a prolific body of work that gives you something to say. Right? Like that's my breakdown of craft to art. As I've talked with so many hundreds of artists and designers and architects and craftspeople, like what is the differentiator of those two? There's a lot of metal workers. Are they Richard Serra? No. Like there's a lot of painters. Are they a Picasso or a Van Gogh? No. And so it's like the people that are able to start to create critical dialogue with the compositions that they make have mastered the technique. They've produced a prolific body of work that has allowed them to dissect the fundamentals, the traditions, and to start to explore how that medium allows them to express themselves. And now they got something to say with what they make. And I think we are at a point where that is happening more and more frequently. Like I look back at the super critique from the Bonsai Society of Portland rendezvous that we covered on Mirai Live, and it's like Greg Brendan is an artist first, craftsman second, right? Like he is.
I just thought of him when you were talking about
totally,
that. Like,
Greg. He is
wonderful human being,
total fantastic guy, tremendous artist. That spruce that he had in that super critique was not, the question wasn't where is the front? Because it wasn't trying to be a traditional bonsai. So now all of a sudden that question is out the door. Going back to like a natural form versus a traditional form, it's like, there's going to be a best viewing space for that tree to execute this elemental representation, but like his front was showing a critical, common, natural occurrence in that tree, and it was showing a timeline. It wasn't showing this after having happened hundreds of years ago. And so now all of a sudden he's taking you on this timeline with his composition where you can see this happening, and it happened recently, in terms of the broken tops and the way that he presented the branches and the fact that the reiterations had yet to form. He knows about reiterations. He knows about alpine forms. He knows about all of that stuff. So for him to present that and then the dialogue to be, I think this could be a better front and we could choose a better pot. It was like, man, we missed it. We missed it. And that's just, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here. So I'm going to get off the soapbox on this, but you really triggered something with the J Cross and the Ben Keating work, because I think it's where we're at though. I think it's where we're at. It's like, hey, y'all, like we got to up our level of what we're interpreting here, because if we all say that this is an art form, well, this is it being practiced as an art, and the dialogue is whether this is right or wrong, good or bad, and that's not what we're doing here.
So what you're saying is, when we see a tree in exhibit, we should first ask, what is the artist trying to say, and then we can go down the other rabbit holes of critique if we get past that point.
Yeah, totally.
That word critique, though, that just gets me. It's
absolutely
like this discussion.
But are you going to be having these critical dialogues about trees being shown in your club show? Maybe. For the advanced practitioners, maybe.
Yeah.
Or are you going to be having these on a regional show? Maybe. For a few of the trees in that show, maybe. On a national level, are you going to be having these? Yes, there are going to be compositions on a national level that are absolutely people tapping into an expression where, instead of saying this is good or bad, does or doesn't hit all the key points of a good bonsai display in a Kokufu mimicked show model, they chose to use that space to say something else. Let's think about what that is, And then I think when you see trees. And ultimately, this is where I really started breaking away and doing personal exhibitions, because that's really the space. I mean, the tokonoma space, in the alcove was a space to contemplate in Japanese bonsai. In the Western world, some people duplicate the tokonoma and try to fill it with all of the ornate accoutrements of a kakejiku or scroll and an accent piece or a kakemono, some like small little figurine, and say, okay, now I've done display right. And it's like, did you really express yourself? Are those elements that are reflective of you? Is that really what we're doing here? Because for most people, Japanese elements
regurgitation.
Yeah,
right?
it's not. It's like, that's beautiful, and you're trying to tap into this cultural thing. That's totally fine. I have no problem with that. Are you expressing yourself? That's a different thing, and that's really where I kind of found the alcove in the Western world to be architecture that had context. And then how do I play off of that architecture and context? And what trees do I choose to play off of that context? Whether it was the Portland Japanese Gardens or Wyden Kennedy, a brutalistic modern piece of architecture, or the Lumber Room, a really stark gallery setting, or the, Skylab and the Artisan's Cup. And like all of that became the alcove that I identified with as somebody born in the United States practicing bonsai inside of this context and being informed by the environment around me.
Oh, I lost you there, I think.
Did we lose you?
Oh, no, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry. The audio was a little funny.
Sorry.
No, technology.
Yeah.
No, that hit a lot of notes, because I've been thinking about that a lot, just as not having trees to play with or work on to the extent, but in those abilities to show in those different spaces, it also makes the argument for having more trees, because you can do so many more things with more trees in the space that you're allowed to show in.
Sure.
In another aspect too, I've always viewed, I grew up skateboarding, right? I saw bonsai. I remember I grew up in Tualatin, Oregon. I saw it at the Kmart parking lot right next to the Jiggles Tavern. That's no longer there. R.I.P. Jiggles. and
we miss you, Jiggles.
Get your food voucher. I remember seeing a white van, and then I didn't know that there was the Masa Furukawa's nursery right up the road. But I always felt this identity or this need to go to that energy, that spot on Twilliger Curves that's now a cannabis dispensary and a strip club or something.
Sure, yeah.
and then I found skateboarding. And I've always been in this mindset now to where I know skateboarders. I did that got back into it now, but not as extent. I hate falling and hurting myself at 30, almost 40.
You are older now. Yeah, that hurts worse.
Right.
And heals slower.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Lay on the ground a little longer. I've always considered the ethos of skateboarding, this DIY art form for some, a craft for others, and this kind of personality as a whole thing similar to that of bonsai.
Mm-hmm.
And also the economy of it. Right now, if you're looking at skateboarding, it's in a lull. It's always based on this up and down, up and down. But then you have these figures like yourself, or I consider Kimura the Rodney Mullen of bonsai.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure we've all heard the name, maybe Rodney Mullen throughout Tony Hawk's Pro Skaters, these video games. It's just been this identity of like, oh, there is so much more that needs to evolve over time, because in the 60s, it started with surfing. And then I went to just skating on a curb, and then I went to this, and then Rodney Mullen came in, and then these people came about from Rodney Mullen. And you look at nowadays where it's just completely different than itself. That will happen in bonsai. Do you think it will ever get there in our lifetime?
Ooh,
get where?
That's the question, right? Get where? What is there? Where is there? Because wherever we envision there, it's not going to go there. I can already tell you that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess let me rephrase. In the aspect of being able to, example, create a band that's still skateboard, but also be that punk ethos, and create a zine on the side. Do you think there's that ability to attain the best mastery of this craft to turn it into art, but also have these other outliers to express your art in different ways within the same art?
Oh, I mean, I hope so. Otherwise it just becomes locked inside a box, you know? I mean, I think, and I think inside of the United States, I think that was what Michael Hagedorn was saying when he said, you know, in Japan, they function off the same artist statement and we function off of independent artist statements here. I think like if anywhere that's going to take place, I think it's going to be here. You know, where we can broaden our perspective enough to appreciate these approaches for what the artist is trying to say without locking it in a box of whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, or hits all the marks of what we're quote unquote supposed to be doing, you know? But I don't know that like that looks like going to a show and everybody standing around going, what do you think the artist is trying to say? You know, and like having this esoteric douchey art discussion of some, you know, like gallery represented in a movie from New York where everybody's kind of wearing like, you know, monotone clothing and is, you know, sipping their cocktail with their pinky out or something. Like, I don't know what that looks like, you know, and I honestly don't really have a fantasy about what that looks like. I think what I would hope is that there is more thought put into exhibitions that empower that to happen. And less value put on people assessing that situation for the public to hear a quote unquote expert dialoguing about the pros and cons of this piece, because you're limited to the perspective of the individual that's sharing information and forming a whole population that might be and truly is one perspective of that composition, you know? And I think that's really where judging for me has been such like it's been a ground to stake my flag on. It's a hill to die on to some degree, not to the point of, you know, self-sacrifice, but it's a hill to die on to say, hey, this is an important thing here if we're all going to put our money where our mouth is and practice bonsai as an art form, because judging is the fastest way to deteriorate a move in the artistic direction. And then you say, well, then we shouldn't do judging. And it's like, no, I think judging is fine as long as you're able to objectively judge or find people that can objectively judge. And then people say you can't objectively judge. And I just disagree with that, quantifiably disagree with that. If it's not about what you like, it's about interpreting the power of the execution of a composition, then I think that judging demands a lot of rigor and attention and a lot of thought and background knowledge to be able to do it well. And how many people are putting in the time to be able to judge well? Like, I don't know anybody that is training to judge bonsai, but I think to judge bonsai, you need to train to do it. I think you need to be trained and trained to do it. And it doesn't mean that you go train with a formulaic perspective. It means that you train by constantly trying to observe and broaden your understanding and awareness of all things, from the horticulture to the art, to the tradition, to the avant-garde, to the materiality, to the aesthetics, to the intended aesthetics, to the intended intention, to the artist intention, to knowing the people that are showing. And people say, well, then that creates bias. It's not about your best friend. It's not about the tree that you like. It's about what piece accomplishes the greatest execution of aesthetic standard and demonstration of the highest level of the art, which means it comes with intention.
Well, that also goes too with the idea of I think we're limiting ourselves to just one art form to get inspired by a lot of the time, because you look at poetry, you look at painting, those go very cohesively. You look at other things where we can do that, but I think we're not in an infantile state anymore, in my opinion. You know, Chase Rosade and I talked about that a lot. He's like, no, we're far beyond the infantile state. We're probably,
for sure,
he said, more than likely teenage years into college, getting to know ourselves and finding our identities every day is something different. You know, world is a fish tank. We're the fish in the tank. And it's this like comprehension where I've always tried to find the outsource of my art, but I need to get there because there's something in me that wants to express it, but it's going to be completely opposite of what people think. Do I care what they say? No. Am I a competitive person? Yes. But do I care about sports? Sometimes. Within the relation of back to skateboarding, right? It's now considered a sport. To some people, it's an art. It's been the Olympics. It's on the world stage. I guess what I'm saying is you have to create a bonsai video game, be the next Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
People throw that at me all the time. Like, if you gamify this, it'll be more economically feasible. It's like, if I gamify this, I can go ahead and walk away from bonsai right now, and that's not what I'm doing. Right. Here.
And then you just put yourself on a t-shirt. It's like, oh, cool image. You know? And it's one of those things where I think, what's that expression? Master of none, you know,
jack of all trades, master of none.
Oh yeah.
There's always that extra part on the end that's left off, you know, and I think that's where we're at in our bonsai theme or sense in the country. As I've met a lot of people across the country now, met people in Japan, Europe, what have you. There's this interesting complexity to where people are trying to figure out who they are, but not knowing where to go to get there. And, you know, it's a really hard thing to battle because we're always there, especially as we were starting young. You know, I go back to childhood, right? I think about what did I want to do then that it's coming to fruition now or completely left. It's that infancy of bonsai. You get into it, you go really deep, you go really hard. And then you get to a point like where I'm at right now, where I've gotten paid to do certain things. I'm like, what does that mean now? It's not just a hobby anymore. It's not economical for my living yet, if it turns into that. But you know what I'm saying? It's this duality with the dichotomy. You know?
Yeah, I always find the people that create the most unique work to care the least about what other people think. You know, like, but I also find the people that create the best work to be the most competitive. But it doesn't mean that you're competing with what other people think or what other people do. You know, like,
is it more competing against yourself?
I think so. I think it is holding yourself accountable. And I also think when you start to do that, there is a real deconstruction of the ego, you know, which is to say, like, it's not hard to say that Peter T makes the best ramification in bonsai right now. It's not hard to say that Mario Comstock can get more fine twigging out of a deciduous tree than any other Western bonsai practitioner in the most extreme aesthetics. I mean, like his famous Korean hornbeam that has all the branches weeping and they're still as ramified as the upper apical region of the tree. You tell me somebody else that can do that. Like when you're competing with yourself to be the best that you can be, it's not hard to give everybody else their flowers. And I think that's a big part of judging, because it's not hard to say, I may not like that, but that is a significant accomplishment and deserves recognition. And I think it's also a lot easier to follow your own path and be able to look at other bonsai and other people's work with a more open mind of being completely blown away and impressed, instead of deflecting the fantastic work that they're doing to try and salvage your own ego because you can't do the same thing. And I really think that that's probably at the base root in the Western world, particularly, and I don't see it as dominant in Europe as I do in the United States, but particularly about trying to put everything into a box and say, is it right or wrong, good or bad, etc. I really think it's a deflection of the ego of like, fuck, I can't do that. I would never have done that. I would never have seen that. I don't know how to do that. You know, and I don't know how I feel about it. And so I'm going to go ahead and take that insecurity and I'm going to vocalize it as a criticism. there are certainly things that are validly critiqued, and as a professional, if you're not critiquing yourself, then you're not doing your job.
Right.
Which is where I think people that create the most interesting things are the ones that are the most competitive, and they're the hardest on themselves. And they also care the least about what somebody else is going to say about it, So like in terms of the dichotomy, I don't see it as much as a dichotomy, because I think once you move into a space with a mastery of craft and a prolific body of work, I think all of the other stuff kind of falls in line in terms of developing something to say, because you've already exercised all of the ego out of yourself in that prolific body of work to know like, wow, that's really hard to do. That's like pretty admirable. That's incredibly beautiful. That's incredibly innovative. Like I have definitely found the more trees that I make at Mirai, the more that I respect other artists' work that really break through and accomplish fantastic things. Cause it's like, I know what it takes to do that. It's fucking hard. Right. And there's a lot of failure, and the success in that is something to celebrate. Like that. If you're judging a show and you have not produced a prolific body of work, I don't think you have grounds to judge, because you haven't exercised out the ego that's going to skew your impression of that thing, And if you haven't mastered the craft,
what you want from that tree, right?
Yeah, and if you haven't mastered the craft and you don't know how hard it is to get this species to branch like that or horticulturally do this, how are you ever going to be able to appreciate the effort and what you're bearing witness to when you're looking at that tree on prime display at a peak of its current aesthetic existence? Like, that's important stuff to validate, man.
Yeah, that's what runs through my head a lot these days, as I have more time to think, being a full-time dad, but also having learned so much just from my daughter growing up as a child and seeing how she interacts with life now and how she does art. She loves painting now. And I just like, there's a part of like, as a parent, like, but wait, no, pull back. That's hers.
That's not yours.
That's hers.
Yeah.
I would do it different, but I'm a grown ass man. I wipe my own ass.
Kids break your ego down. And like, speaking about the ego and bonsai and stuff, like, it's valuable. It's not to demonize, the ego. Like, everybody's got it.
Some of it. You need some of it to survive.
And you need some of it to stand proud with what you make and create. If you've exercised all of that self-competitiveness and you've broken yourself down and assessed and you have a piece that you're willing to put out there in public, you need to stand proud with that piece. That's representing you. That's representing all of that painful deconstruction. And the ego is important there. Like, you can't stand there and be like, I hope this is okay. It's like, no, you know what? This is what I'm trying to say, and this is what I'm doing here. And take it or leave it, like it or not. I couldn't care, because like, I feel good about this. This is representing me. Like, that is important to present I think, to present your work at that stage. And if it's not at that stage, it's not time, Right.
And that will show. It will come across, because the energy of that space or composition, or how you just even position a tree, is like, here you go, boop.
When you get that from somebody, when you get to sit there and see that from somebody, that's powerful stuff, man.
Yeah. That's connected to it, right? You gotta be ready to see it.
Look, hey, listen, Sergio Kwan's Yatsubusa Elm in the National Show.
That just got taken, I think, to Longwood Garden.
Yeah, he put it on his social. Dude,
that's great stuff there.
I didn't get to see it in person, which, I'm regretful of, but I'm glad it's going to be in a public space where I can see it in person. But like, man, the fact that tree wasn't recognized just like totally breaks my heart, because that's a moment with that tree right there on display for the first time.
Yeah.
You're never going to see another one like it. You're never going to see that. For people that got to see that in person, to not cherish that moment and opportunity to see a tree at that point in that context and space, like, you don't get that back. You don't get that opportunity back. Did you take that in?
It was his first time at the national show this year.
Yeah.
The whole context of it, like, you don't get that back. You don't get Sergio's first gesture in public like that again. And he used that tree.
Like a first date, you never get a first date.
Yeah, you never get that back. You never get that back. It's like when you see artists create something, their first, like I have a few now tokutake pots that were from like when he very first started, and they're rough and they're, wonky and asymmetrical. It's like you never get that back. You never get the first pots back. You never get the first trees back. You never get that first gesture back. Like when you're in that moment, having the ability to see that thing, to not value all of that context, you never get to do that again. Are you kidding me? That was a moment with that tree. I hope people understand and value that. Like, and that's not to pick that out as the only one. I'm sure there were multiple trees that were in that state. Did anybody actually consider like, wow, this is Sergio's first time as one of the top level North American bonsai practitioners, arguably one of the better deciduous practitioners globally. And he is presenting his coup de grace to deciduous aesthetics right now for the first time for him, for this tree at this exhibition. Did anybody even think about that when they looked at that tree? I would almost guarantee you nobody looked that deeply, or very few people did.
Or a lot of people might not have known that deeply also. Like I knew of Sergio as an artist and I've seen his pictures online and knew he was at a very high level. But I don't know every bonsai artist in the world. So I have, I guess, a harder time comparing and saying, okay, this is the peak of his work or of deciduous bonsai,
Yeah, and maybe I'm not saying it's the peak of his work or deciduous bonsai. I'm saying that's the first time that he showed a tree, and he just showed an absolute banger. I mean,
one of the peaks.
He just dropped a diamond on everybody. Were they able to see it? Like they see the polish and the luster on that thing? I mean, that was impressive. Even from a picture, it was like, well, hats off to you, Sergio. I know what it takes to cultivate a Yatsubusa elm to look like that, and I can tell you that was at the very top of horticulture and aesthetics right there. For that species to get to that level with what it started as and where it's at is insane. And I don't think it was recognized.
And it was a huge tree. Like
the hell is
I feel like on the table it was probably taller than I was.
Yeah. No, it was
a different appreciation.
Monster through and through.
Sure.
Yeah. Monster through and through. That tree is insane.
Ryan, we talked a lot about how you are as a person and how you live now. What before bonsai in your childhood or anything, like what jobs, what things in life gave you the ability to just push through the bullshit and just get on? I mean, I know you did, and you've talked about this before. We've talked about it past. Basketball was your big part. You saw the magazine, but like, what about your childhood? Was it from your dad? Was it, what advice did your parents give you? What makes you go still, because we always rely on that one thing.
Yeah. Well, things. I mean, I was really blessed with two fantastic parents. I mean, my mom and dad are salt of the earth. My dad grew up the son of a ranch hand on the flat tops of Western Colorado. So he grew up until 16 working on a ranch. My grandpa was a World War II veteran on Angio Beach. So he was one of a few people that survived D-Day from that location. And my grandma was like a one-room school teacher that taught all grades, kindergarten through 12th grade, until they moved into town. And they moved into town so that my dad could go to high school. So like it was I grew up in almost like a very rural blue collar ranching kind of style, even though my dad ultimately did other things with his professional life. But I had like a very deeply rooted, hardworking sort of upbringing, where I was always helping chop wood and do all of the labor and stuff, which I really appreciated. But I didn't know my grandpa. He died before I had memory, so I didn't really get the rub from him. But there were three Italian brothers named the Durrett brothers that operated a restaurant called the Italian Underground in my very small town, Glen Springs, Colorado. And the Durrett brothers had worked for my grandfather at his gas station when my dad's family moved into town. And my grandpa, being a World War II vet, he was a real no bullshit kind of guy. And the Durrett brothers were apparently quite the handful as like these, Italian immigrant boys. Yeah. And so my grandpa was really hard on them. And I actually started working at the Italian Underground when I was like 11 or 12, which technically wasn't totally legal.
Some forged paperwork.
Yeah, but you know, at that time in that small town with that family connection, like they let me start working there as a busboy, and they worked my ass off. And not only did they work my ass off, they were very vocal towards me about my work ethic, my mannerisms, how I handled the job, you know, in ways that only a rancher and a blue collar sort of World War II vet could be. For example, Gregory, who's passed away, rest in peace. He was a really significant mentor to me. I remember one time I was holding my fork like this instead of like this, and we were eating like family meal afterwards. And he said, "You look like some of those cocksuckers in the slop bin in the military. Don't be a cocksucker." You know, like that was kind of how he talked to me. On the side, outside of like client, you know, like turn that fucking table quicker than you can, you know, like it was just very like rugged,
authentically loving.
Yeah, but there was affection there. And so like, the hard work was a sort of familially born in, my own motivation to be the best that I could be. My parents said that I sort of came out of the womb with, like, I knew what I wanted from a very young age before bonsai. Like if I got into something, I went deep and I wanted to do it to the best of my ability. But I think, the indomitable spirit, that it has taken to weather the apprenticeship and the things that I've experienced. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm like exceptional or anything, but that's what's allowed me to get through these things. And it's also, you know, kind of what's continued to drive me is I still have this, unrealized mission, which is to see how good I can be at bonsai.
Right. Yeah, you know, and Karate Kid plays probably into that somewhere too.
I mean, I like seeing the martial arts. I think martial arts.
All jokes aside.
Yeah, I think martial arts, like particularly Taekwondo, for me, and my Taekwondo instructor's name was Rocky Barrows, and his dad owned a bodybuilding gym right next door to the Taekwondo gym, and they were just like super solid, salt of the earth people that demanded a lot. So I was really surrounded by a lot of people that did not give a lot of grace when you weren't doing your best. And we're happy to tell you about it in some pretty rugged ways. And once I got to Japan, you know, that was ultimately sort of Mr. Kimura's mission, was getting the best out of his apprentices. And he honestly wasn't that nice about it, but that wasn't new to me. It was just from a different angle of this foreign perspective of a culture that I didn't understand. And I think that's where I took some hits until I acclimated to that. And then I was able to make sense of it. And then when it all kind of flipped on its head, after my apprenticeship, that's when I was really caught off guard. Because in the United States, you'd think like you broke bread together, you guys are going to be friends or respect each other, have this relationship, and it's like that's not the way it works there, and that's not how it worked. And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know that was a thing, you know, that like you could go through that together, and then afterwards, it's like, all right, you're a foreigner again, get the fuck out of here. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's real rugged.
Yeah, I not in the same boat, but I can be right on the same river with that empathy there, where I had friends from Japan that I thought were friends. You go to Japan and be like, oh, no. That's different. Like,
exactly.
You don't tell someone you can stay at their house and then be like, no, sorry. I'm like, not to an American.
Yeah. It's just different. You know? It's not wrong or right. There's no judgment. It's just I wasn't equipped for that. You know,
I don't think you ever are, though, until you get into it, you know, similarly to people coming to the U.S. and figuring out what the U.S. really is. Because you can watch a movie, you can taste the food, you can read a book. But until you're living in the full congruent thing, the petri dish, if you will, of the science experiment that has to grow whatever it's going to grow, you don't really know. I mean, you can speak the language, but sociologically, you have to really live in the thick of it.
Yeah. The culture was harder than the language. The culture was harder than the language.
100%.
Yeah.
Because it's also, in comparison, you know, I talked about this with Michael Hagedorn a while back. There's more left unsaid, even culturally, than it is said, to where it's all that balance of reading the air more than what's even said before it's said. And it's like
space between the lines, man.
Oh, so it's like cooking and having to have this sinuous relationship with your other cooks or chefs to know what needs to be fired before it's called. And same with the bonsai. It's like you have to know what season's going to happen or read the air for the heat wave that's coming.
Exactly.
You know, the water before a freeze. You know, it's always like, okay, you know, why not?
It's a gift though. I mean, when you're given that awareness of the, you know, the space between the notes, or the quiet between the notes, or the space between the lines, or you start to recognize there's things that exist inside of the unspoken and the unwritten and the, you know, and the non-visual that are equally as valuable, if not more powerful. Like that's really the strength of Japanese culture is the value system put around the restraint. Which
intention,
which drives, you know, honestly could drive an American crazy, because we say everything. We speak our mind. That's what you're supposed to do. Communicate. Stand up for yourself. Yes, you can.
I'm me. This is me.
Totally. And it's like that didn't work well there.
Yeah, I think there's also a thing too, as American. I mean, I'm almost 40 now, have a kid. It changes you, like we've talked about numerous times in this conversation. Ryan and I talked. Ryan, Houston's in a PhD program, so it's similarly the same fashion where you have your.
That's my child right now.
That's a big child.
Cultivating a baby.
But, you know, it's one of these things where I was born in blue collar. I've worked blue collar. We've talked about this before, Ryan. You know, and this idea of like, I never felt like I could say I didn't know how to do something because I always had to know. But in Japan, there's that idea where it's okay to say I don't know because you need to know how to get there.
In fact, it is expected.
It's required.
It's expected that you're going to say you don't know if you don't know. And as an American, you go and you're expected to say you do know, or you can, even if you
figure
don't, and figure it out. And I learned that was the wrong way to go about it.
And you know, having a partner be able to be that way, I learned so much in that aesthetic of like, oh, I don't have to know everything right now about this tree. Oh, I don't have to know everything about this art form to get there. That tells me I need to do more research, or I need to expect to find people that can help me get there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we're getting there as a community, specifically in bonsai and art, because without that, we're just fumbling our own feet and not knowing one foot in front of the other. You know, soon you'll be walking out the door, as that Christmas movie says.
I think that's a huge sign of a professional too. Is a professional to say, I don't really know, you know?
Yeah. And I've kind of always been there, just in relation, like Houston and I talked about it a lot, because we started the first ever bonsai club at Ohio State ever in existence as a school.
The university. Yeah.
Ohio State. Yeah. The Ohio State University, because trademark, watch out. And we ran into a lot of students that were like, do you know this? I'm like, I don't know, but let's learn it together. And that empowered them more to want to go find more, and then completely go in a different way. Maybe they never touch it again. Maybe they never do it. But that little split of time allowed them to see that we're all human. We don't know everything. We can't know everything. I mean, that's insane to think you do. And I don't want to say it's ego, but maybe it's just cultural competency.
Something. I don't know. You know, like it's part of being an American for sure is saying I don't know is a foreign thing for a lot of and that's not to say that's not to universally blanket American culture like that, or culture in the United States, but like certainly I think it's a weak point for a lot of us, and something to be worked on, you know, because like as a bonsai professional, if you can't say that you don't know, then what you do know is, I think it invalidates what you do know, you know, because it's like if you tell somebody something that's bullshit and then they do it, then it's like, well, what else did he say that's bullshit? And that's on you. Almost the most credible thing to say when you don't know is I don't know, to be able to empower what you do know, to have that power and confidence. Yeah.
That's probably, I mean, not to put words in your own mouth. Was that one of the most surprising things that you learned through your career? That having that open, honest ability has helped your students get better quicker?
Yeah, for sure. I think, so before I ever recorded Mirai live, I made a bunch of instructional videos that the world will never see, you know, and like when I was, it's abysmal, but I was learning to be on camera. I was learning to educate. Like when I started my first class, my first lecture was like 20 minutes long back in 2011. I learned so much about bonsai trying to teach other people bonsai, which is a common theme of teaching, is you learn what you don't know. And exactly. Inside of that, once I was able to learn how to organize my thoughts and like create a curriculum that was able to convey the knowledge to students in a concise and succinct way, and over the course of time, build in all of the bumper rails of all of the different factors that can change the outcome or change the approach, it became so much easier to be like, I don't really know, because there was enough. I felt confident in what I had enough to be like, I have enough here. I am valuable. Like what I'm saying does have value. I had enough of that confidence in the knowledge that I had created and the way that I was able to convey it to be able to say, yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, and then that creates kind of the next tangent of knowledge to go dig into, not because I don't want to say I don't know the next time, but because genuinely, if I don't know, I'm going to want to know. Right. And I think that kind of curiosity has really driven me. I mean, the regenerative agronomical nutritional thing, like, the whole reason that I went through all of this nutrition and stuff is because I didn't know why certain trees were doing certain things. Yeah. And I wanted
shit's heavy, man.
Oh, it's super gnarly, like why are the tips of a Rocky Mountain juniper turning brown on certain branches in the middle of spring? And why is it shedding its needles in a wrong time of year? And why did all the 2-year needles fall off? And why are the midsection of the tree yellow and the top and bottom are green? Like, these are great horticultural conundrums of bonsai that I can guarantee you nobody can actually answer. And I was not satisfied with that because it was happening and nobody could tell me what was going on. And that means I couldn't fix it, And so digging into it was a quest for the answer. And it just took me into such a deep, deep realm of physiology and science that it really became a new incubator and breeding ground for concepts and aesthetics and ideas and approaches. And that each time that I go down those like super deep rabbit holes, I come out being able to see with more peripheral vision and appreciate more broadly what people are able to accomplish in their trees, which I do think serves the role of judging and serves the role of teaching and serves the role of creating. To have that breadth and that depth to your pond is like, it's like building an heirloom soil in the garden. Like, people talk about the vegetable that's grown, but it's really the quality of the soil. And to build good soil, it might take 20 years to build heirloom soil. And then when you leave that garden, taking that soil is the most valuable thing you could take. No single plant outweighs the biology of that soil. So like, once I get into that realm, it just like, it's like an atomic bomb, that mushroom clouds, the metaphors and the extrapolation of one thing about a scientific discovery becomes a realization about the world that I live in and my reality that has really enriched my life well beyond what trying to say, is this right or wrong, or is the traditional model good or bad, or how do I style a tree? It's like, the power of this art form, the power of these trees in this containerized environment, in the soil necessities of that limited gravity column, and all of the conundrums horticulturally and scientifically that we're starting to tackle does create an artistic approach where science is now breeding art, and does create a metaphorical value to the effort that we're putting in, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, it's very easy to get to this realization that bonsai can save the world. Because there are very few things that have that kind of power. There are very few things in life that have that kind of power, where they can literally teach you about every aspect of life on a tangible, identifiable level. And bonsai can.
It's funny you say that, because that's been going through my mind this whole, since I moved to this town I'm at. Like, how can bonsai save my life, but also the world?
Yeah. And it can.
It saved it more than once. It saved it more than once.
And it might save everybody in a different way. And that's the power of it, like that's the value of it.
Getting back to nature.
Sure. That might be one way.
Challenge for all the listeners is try to find how you can use bonsai to
save the world.
Yeah. In your own way, communicate something that's important to you, or like we were talking about before, or teach something to yourself or to those around you, anything like that.
Sure.
I've heard you talk about this idea a number of times in your podcast before, Ryan. I have a certain kinship with anyone who has that view, because as Kevin said, we're all thinking like that. So I kind of wonder if this is the inevitable conclusion of anybody practicing bonsai, is like seeing those connections and the potential there, or if it's just a subset of people that are crazy enough to think that. Haven't found that out yet, but
I think it actually goes beyond bonsai to just the organism of the tree. When I was walking through Great Basin National Park, the Magic Grove, which is easily the most remote grove of ancient bristlecone pines on planet Earth. And I was super lucky to be there with Brian Smithers, who's a researcher from Montana State, highly, highly knowledgeable about bristle. Maybe the foremost expert. I don't really know. I can't lob that out there, but I have lobbed that out there, but I want to rescind that and just acknowledge that I don't know if he's like, no, don't worry about it. I mean, like he is at the top of his field in bristlecone pine research. And inevitably we're like sitting in this grove, and Josh Sales is filming us and recording us, and the team was there, and we were really kind of like dissecting Brian's knowledge and talking about these ancient trees. All of them led to like esoteric discussions about our existence and the meaning of life and all of these like bigger concepts. No conversation had in that grove with this elite scientist knowledgeable about ecology and the ecosystem that we were existing in. No conversation was safe from deviating into this discussion of like what it's all about, what it means, and the value that we derive from being present with these trees and looking at them and trying to understand them. It all led to self-reflection.
Yeah.
And like, I was really moved by that, because I think you see the individual in a bonsai tree, but I've never been in a space where the conversation, science, culturally, topographically, geographically, geologically, all led to like, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What is our purpose, kind of a thing. And every single conversation ended up there. And it wasn't just like I was in a deep mood or Brian was in a deep mood. We were literally there to look at trees and talk trees. And that's where it ended up. And I think that's where I say it's not just the bonsai tree, like trees in general. When you think about being the descendant of primates, in our primal mind, the tree was home and the tree was safety. Like from the moment you're born, you better find a tree or you're not going to last long. And that continues to, I think, be the case, however much we want to reject that, deny that, or we're not knowledgeable that that is the case because we're sheltered in a built environment. But the tree is our number one orator that bridges us to the landmass. Like, it tells you everything that's happened over thousands of years. However old the tree is, you have that much history visually if you know how to interpret it. And that is a powerful thing, to know the ground that you stand on by something that's bridging the gap of time. And, so like when I look at trees and I feel like, yeah, trees can save the world, and, bonsai can save the world and stuff, as ridiculous as it sounds, it probably really ultimately does go back to, our ultimate beginning and what has continued to foster life on Earth.
That leads me to my final question, because we've been talking for 2 hours.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation.
You should have known. You should have known when we got into this is going to happen, Kevin.
I didn't preface this to Ryan or Huston. No, it sounds like a very ethereal kind of intimate space where it's just that delicacy, but also the availability to have that open air talk, because you were in the ether of the tree. You were brought back to that space. That's I strive for that in my own understanding of where I'll be living next after this time I'm here, what have you. That's getting into the woo woo, but yeah.
Go there. I'm all about woo woo.
Yeah. My hippie dippy life, Oregon.
We talked about trees talking to us, so we're already deep in the woo woo.
Yeah, we're in the woo woo. Yeah, we were in the woo woo from the beginning today.
The boy at Oregon, not the boy.
That's right. That's right.
Recently, one of the most recent podcasts you did, you talked about, yourself. What I heard you say was, I don't think I'll be doing bonsai forever. And then when you get there, 2 questions here in one. If you weren't doing bonsai now, what would you be doing? And if you ever chose to leave bonsai behind, where would your energy go next?
Yeah. A lot of people have asked me, if I wasn't doing bonsai, what would I be doing?
Probably hate that question,
And
but
no, I don't hate that question at all, because it does make me think. There was like 2 times I thought about quitting my apprenticeship, and there's probably been 3 or 4 times that I've thought about quitting Mirai and being a bonsai professional. So I have actually thought really hard about it. And in the early years, when I hit some significant obstacles and thought about quitting bonsai as a profession, I thought, I'll be an architect. And as I've learned more and more about architecture and architects, I really admire what good architects are able to do and how they're able to synthesize the built environment and merge it with design to enhance people's experience. But I have a bigger and bigger problem with the built environment. So I don't think I would be able to do that with moral and ethical clear conscience. And then I thought, I would be a stonemason, because I love working with rocks, and I like the natural material, and I like trying to, again, very thematically, recreate and abstract natural moments in artificial spaces that give people the ability to be transported. But then, to make a living as a stonemason, you also end up stacking bricks and doing a lot of, unnatural things. Yeah. And so, in the most recent sort of come to Jesus moment that I've had with my career and profession and path of life choice, I actually did not have an answer for that. And as I've evolved and where I've evolved to, I don't think that it's an option any longer. I think I'm too deep into it. It's become my reference point for the world and for life, right. And that's not to say like I am my career, because it's very different than that. I know too much to go back, unfortunately, and fortunately, and I had this experience in my apprenticeship. Like, I was sitting there wiring maybe 8 or 9 months into my apprenticeship, and I realized there's just this random thought that popped into my head. I can never go back to doing juvenile, terrible bonsai and feeling great joy and pleasure out of it, because I know too much. I don't know enough to be good, but I know too much to go back to that and get the joy out of it. I now know too much about this world, the natural world, and the power of these beings, organisms that are these trees, whether they're natural or large or small or bonsai or not. Like, I know too much, but I don't know enough to be at peace with the whole thing. And so I really do romanticize being free of the burden that I've put myself under, taking on the life and the profession and the pursuit and the lifestyle that I have, where I never really just get to enjoy a hot day. I never get to go to the coast when it's 100 degrees. I don't get to go to the mountains and go fishing when it's, there's a storm coming, or any of the other experiences that I really envy a lot of people having the ability to freely move with a modality that lacks a living organism depending on them that can't feed itself, So like, I do want that freedom at some point. And I also just had like a really powerful experience. I was with a long-term student of mine this past weekend, and he was trying to divest himself of his entire collection, and there was not enough. There was not enough room in the truck for it, and he had hit the point where he was like, I'm ready to have this freedom. And when we couldn't load his trees into the truck, he was like, maybe this is a sign that I'm supposed to keep doing this. And he about faced immediately. And I was just like, wow, that was a powerful moment to be part of, not because I was like, oh my God, this just reset my understanding of bonsai or anything like that. It was just like, man, these moments in life, like how you choose to perceive them and accept them and keep moving forward, really determine your experience. And I've always admired this particular, what someone I would call a tremendous friend. I've always admired his ability to adapt and roll with the punches and find the good in things, and watching him maybe secretly feeling a little bit of joy and anticipation of the freedom, and then immediately being like, maybe I'm supposed to keep doing this. I'm going to keep him. Who knows?
Next call. Sorry, honey.
It was wild. And I was just like, I'm going to take some of that with me. That was awesome. You know, like I just watched him handle that in a way that was admirable and respectable. So anyways, I don't know what I would do. And I romanticize having the freedom, but who knows if I'll ever actually get there.
Well, in every iteration of career changes where you go maybe more one way than the other and have some more time to freely do things you want to do on the weekends, you know, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I have apprentices now.
You're old enough, your back's only so strong.
Well, that's what they make a dingo for. You know, I have apprentices now and I think at some point, like, I look at Mr. Kimura in his 80s still just like crushing, and his work is different than it was when I was there. And it's like, I think he will probably legitimately do bonsai till he dies, you know, which a lot of Japanese.
I mean, that's Chase Rosade right there. He said, I want to die sitting in my chair with my scissors in front of my favorite tree. I was like, cool, man.
I mean, that's awesome. I don't have that same feeling now, but I might when I'm Chase's age, you know, if I make it 90, that far. Yeah, if I make it that far. Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Time will tell.
Yeah. Ryan, thank you, man.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do it.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you.
Houston and
both
Kevin.
Ryans.
No.
But thank you, Ryan.
I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, Kevin.
Thanks for going deep, man.
Yeah, you and I go.
I missed you, man. You know,
for sure. It's been too long.
Next time I'm back in town, I'll hit you up.
Come on out. Mirai's always home.